The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. Thrilled to be here with you on this Tuesday morning. We're going to be with you live for the next 2 hours talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective. We got a lot of things to cover. We got a great guest for you coming up in just a few minutes. I want to remind you at the start of the show that this entire program is meant to be interactive. We want to participate with you. We want you to we want you to be a part of the show, actually. We want you to let us know what you're thinking, what your questions are. Kelby's going to show you some of the different ways that you can participate while I remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. When you go there, lots of things to do, but you'll see that there's a computer screen, and if you click on the triangle, then you can watch either the show live or the most recently recorded live show. Now somebody asked me recently, why do you go through this? Because obviously they have to go to the page to see that. But the truth of the matter is a lot of people watch our show on YouTube. So I just want to let you know that there are other ways to do that. You can do that on our homepage. And the nice thing about doing it on our homepage is that there's a little icon up in the upper left-hand corner that you can click on. And that allows you to scroll through and see the 100 most recent shows, and you can pause them, fast forward, rewind, do all of that stuff. And then the other nice thing about watching on our homepage is what we call the live feature. It's just to the side of the computer screen on that autism-live.com site. And if you put your cursor in the box that says your question, sky's the limit. You get to type. All you have to do is hit enter. And I mean that sincerely. That's all you have to do. There is no login. There's no password. There's no username. There's no credit card information. In fact, we don't even collect data. And I know at some point that's going to change. I've been fighting the good fight for a couple of years now to make that not the thing, but it will change at some point. But right now, it's totally anonymous. We don't know where you are. We don't know who you are. You can write in and ask whatever you want. It's totally free. I make suggestions to you that when you write in, it's best if you give as much detail as possible about whatever question you're writing, including if it's about something that you've seen on the show that you're asking a question about. Make sure that you're as specific as possible, because I have no way of knowing which episode you watched and who you saw. So no pronouns like, he and she, and no it, because I don't know what those things are. Be as specific as possible. And we also like to know where in the world you are. Not because, used to be, we had a map when we were first starting out, and we would put a pin every time somebody would tell us they were from someplace. But I'll be honest with you, the map filled up and we ran out of time, right? Time and pins. But honestly, the reason why we want to know now is because when we give you referrals to different resources, it's just not the same everywhere. So if you tell us, hey, my closest major city is Chicago, that's vastly different than you telling me, hey, my closest city is Tulsa, Oklahoma. So I wish it weren't that way, but it is. It helps us to help you because we want to help you get to that progress that you're looking for and get to the resources. We can talk all day and go way past 2 hours about how many resources we wish there were and how many resources it would be nice to have. But the truth of the matter is that that would take forever. And we want to talk about what resources are already in place or are about to be there in the next 10 minutes, right? Because that's what helps us. So we can do that better if we know where you are. All right, I do like to remind you at the start of the show that we have experts who are on the show. We have wonderful guests who are on the show. And I love referring you to experts because I think that's a great service that we can do on the show. But I want to remind you that I'm not one of the experts. I'm a parent, I'm a former teacher, I'm an autism parent, and my son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. He is now 12 and a half, and I got incredibly lucky. I want to be honest that we worked really hard, and he especially worked hard, but I got incredibly lucky because sometimes hard work, if you're doing the wrong things or things that are not are efficient, it really can be a waste of time, right? But I got lucky and I got resources because I ran into people who took the time to say to me, here's what you need to do and here's how you need to do it. And by the way, here's what you need to follow it up with. And I hope that in some small way I can help you to get to that point too, because it has meant so much to us what our journey has been because of that help, because of that support, because of the services that we got, that I am in the fortunate position that I am at. So I want to help you to be lucky too. I want to help you to find what you specifically need, because this is not one size fits all. What my son had, what the support that I had is not necessarily what you need or what the people in your life need. But I know that there are resources out there, and I want to help you to get to them and help foster more resources. So that's why we're here. That's why I'm here. You know what I always say? We can do this together. We hold hands. Si se puede, right? Okay. So that's my news for the morning. We always like to start the show with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out, what does this mean? What are the experts talking about? And what does this have to do with me? Why should I bother to learn this? So today's term is the 3-term contingency. And I want you to know that I set these up well in advance, and that it's always so interesting because something happens and I go, well, that's why it needed to be today. So 3-term contingency, this is something that you may hear when you're talking to people in the ABA field, but I think based on things that happened this morning, there's a great deal of misunderstanding having to do with how this is applied, ABA for autism. So I'm so glad that this is today's jargon. Okay, today's jargon, 3-term contingency. Let's take a look at what our actual definition is. It's one of the reasons why we do this. 3-term contingency in operant conditioning refers to stimulus control, in particular an antecedent contingency called the discriminative stimulus, SD, that influences the strengthening or weakening of a behavior through such consequences as reinforcement or punishment. Okay, if you understand that, bless you, because this is to me. It's the peanuts going womp 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 womp. What does this have to do with me and my life? This is so overcomplicated for me. It gives me a headache even now. All right, so let's move on to our working definition. This is why we do the jargon of the day, to try to figure out what are we talking about. Okay, 3-term contingency. Very simply, this is the ABCs of behavior. And by the way, this is all behavior. This is behavior that I engage in, behavior you engage in, behavior that everybody that you're going to interact with today, and every animal that you interact with. This is the behavior of living beings, okay? And it's very, very simple. And we just have to remember the ABCs. A stands for antecedent. Antecedent is what happened before. Then there is a behavior, which is the B, and then the C is the consequence. And when we're talking about the 3-term contingency, we're talking about everything, how it happens, not necessarily what we want to happen, but everything that happens, okay? So in our lives, if you think about this for just today, every behavior that you do has an A, a B, and a C. And every behavior that everyone around you does has an A and a B and a C. The example that I always use, because it's simple for me, is that every single day, there is a moment in our lives in which we turn on a light switch. It could be that it's in the morning because we're going into the bathroom and the bathroom isn't have great windows and light in the morning. But there is a moment in which we get up, we're doing something, we stop what we're doing, and we turn on the light switch, okay? So what is the antecedent for that? And there are hundreds of them. It could be that, you're going into the kitchen and you flick on the light switch because you already know that there is no light in the kitchen. It could be that you're sitting in the dining room and you're reading a book, and you start to strain your eyes, and you go, I'm gonna get, and it's like automatic. You get up and you turn on the light switch. It could be that you're walking into your office and that is your routine. You pop your lights on. But there was a moment before the lights were on, then you engaged in the behavior of turning the lights on, and then there is a consequence. There is always a consequence for behavior, right? Sometimes the consequence is not what we like, and sometimes it is what we like. The consequence of turning the light switch on is usually, although not 100% of the time, that the lights come on and it changes what's happening in the room. Sometimes it's a subtle difference. Sometimes it's a huge difference. Sometimes it's painful when the lights come on. Sometimes it makes us happy when the lights go on, right? There are many different antecedents for the behavior of turning on a light switch. There are many different consequences for what happens when the lights come on, and it's very individual. So it's important for us to begin to look at all behavior in terms of that A, the B, and the C. Because what we're going to then do if we're treating autism with ABA, applied behavior analysis, and this is a basic building block, is that we begin to look at what is the behavior that the person is engaging in that is troublesome. So if the person is biting, for instance, that's not something that we want to let go, right? It's not going to be helpful to the person to bite. There is absolutely a reason why they're biting. It is not random behavior. There is no such thing as random behavior. Although it looks random sometimes, they're biting for a reason. So we begin to look at it and go, well, what's the antecedent? What happens right before they bite? Because we're trying to figure out, why is this behavior happening? Another way of looking at it, and ABA does look at it this way, is that there has to be something in the consequence that is some form of a paycheck, or it wouldn't continue to happen. Because if you look at all the behaviors that we do that are negative, why do people smoke? Well, we can look at it and go, well, there was an antecedent. They got anxious. They, wanted something to do with their hands, or they felt the need for the nicotine, and so they picked up the cigarette. But remember that there is some sort of a consequence that happens as well that is making this behavior continue to happen. I call it rule number 1, that we don't engage in any behavior unless there is some sort of a paycheck personally. And you might look at it and go, well, the consequence for smoking is that you can't breathe and you're wheezing and you smell and, you leave yourself open to lung cancer. Yeah, but there's also another immediate consequence that for some people, it's the rush of the nicotine, right? For some people, it's calming because they take a deep breath, and that's the only deep breath that they take when they're inhaling from the cigarette. So they're getting an immediate paycheck of some form. And when we see behaviors that are not behaviors that we want to, usually that is the case. There is some sort of a consequence that is a paycheck. And if that paycheck weren't there, the person wouldn't engage in it certainly as often. So when we want to teach someone something, we can use the principles of ABA. We can use those ABCs to set up a circumstance in which they want to do it more. And that's really half of what ABA does, is saying, hey, I want you to be able to tie your shoes. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set up a circumstance beforehand that makes you want to tie your shoes. And then when you do the attempt, I'm going to reward you. And then as you get better and better, I'm going to reward you more and more and more so that you link up, I tie my shoes and good things happen, right? So total reward, reward, reward. On the other side, there are behaviors that happen in autism that aren't conducive towards having a full and productive life by anyone's standards. Like biting. Biting other people is not something that is going to help you in your life, but there's a reason why you're biting. So we look at what the reason is. We go, okay, wait a second. Something happens and they bite. And then there is a consequence for that. And what is the consequence that is the paycheck for them? There's negative consequences for other people, but what is the paycheck? And then we manipulate these things. So we change the antecedent so that maybe there isn't the need to bite. or we change the antecedent so there is something that fulfills the need that the bite was doing, and we change the consequence based on what the paycheck was. We change the consequence so that we arrive at a place where the need to bite is filled by something that is okay and that you don't hurt yourself or anybody else. And we stopped rewarding whatever the reward was, so that it wasn't the woohoo when you bit anyway. And in that way, we lessen challenging behavior. We grow and teach on the good side, and we lessen behavior. I want to point out, and I'm going to talk about more about this in the second hour, that it does say in the definition punishment, because that is the real life. There is punishment in real life. But the reality of ABA for autism is that punishment is almost never used. And when it is used, it's a very controlled thing. And we're going to talk more about that in the second hour today. But I want to be clear that good ABA for autism, you shouldn't be seeing any punishment strategies except for in extreme circumstances and under the care of a licensed psychologist. That is not something you would have a ground level therapist doing. So I know people go, oh, well, they're just punishing kids into behaving the way they want. And it just is not the case. That is not good ABA for autism. It wouldn't be effective. We've learned over the years, there's all kinds of studies that say that punishment strategies are not as effective as reward strategies. And so that's what good ABA for autism focuses on. 3-term contingency. It's like the keys to the kingdom. It's good jargon. All right, moving on. We always have a question of the day, and our question for you today, this is very funny. Our question, because I write these beforehand. What is the one thing that you know will set you or your child off? Because something set me off this morning, and I'm going to talk about it in the second hour. But what is it that sets you off? Or what is it that sets your child off? I know what sets my child off. My child is set off by perceived injustice, and it could be injustice that he's feeling for him or injustice that he's feeling for somebody else, and it's equal and even. If he sees somebody else going through something that he says that's not justice, whoo, have a seat, because it's going to be a long day. That's what sets him off. And there's so many things that set me off. It would take a week. But you know what sets me off more than anything else is when somebody takes this, it's like tabloid mentality. When somebody takes something with a little bit of truth in it and then they it up into this thing that is not based in truth. That makes me nuts, because I know I have been victim of that before, where somebody has said, oh, this is what it is. And I've gone, oh my gosh, but it doesn't give you the full picture. And I see that a lot of us are influenced by that. So it makes me nuts. So we're going to talk about that. But write in on Facebook and tell us what sets you off or what sets your child off. You can tell us both. It's an interesting thing, and we can explore why. Why is that the thing that sets us off? Now, we always have a topic of the week, and our topic this week kind of goes hand in hand with everything that we're talking about, is antecedent modifications. This whole idea, there are 3 things that we do when we're teaching, and there's 3 things that we do when we're changing behavior. And one of them is that we can manipulate the antecedents, as I was saying before. We can manipulate the consequences, and we can put in replacement behaviors. Those are three powerful things that we can do. By the way, notice that none of them are talk about the behavior, because a lot of us, I know I've been through this experience with my child before. You're someplace and someone or your child is doing something that you wish they wouldn't do. And we think we've been brought up to believe that we can just say, stop doing that. And that never, ever works. One of the most powerful things that I learned as a teacher was that when a behavior was happening, that discussing the behavior was not going to change it. That I really didn't have a lot of control over the behavior, that I had control over how I reacted to it. That was what I learned as a teacher before I knew ABA. I have control over how I react to this. And I also knew that I had control over how I planned and set up my day for my students, which is antecedent modification. So we're going to talk this week a lot about the power of what we do beforehand, how we set ourselves up for success, those kinds of things. I think you're going to find it fascinating because it's very freeing. Very freeing to talk about antecedent modifications. Now, all of that having been said, and Kelby, my iPad is useless to me, but there we go. Thank you so much. Oh, that was Kara Kaczynski. We'll hear from her later on. But in any case, in just a few minutes, we have a wonderful guest who's going to be with us, a fabulous young man who is the author of the Young Guardian series. He is Grady P. Brown, and he has a total of 7 books out. They're in the fantasy, young adult fantasy genre. Amazing young man on the spectrum, and I believe he's on spring break right now, which is the only reason why he's able to be here with us. But I'm thrilled that he's going to be with us, so we're going to be talking with him. We've got some great autism news, especially for those of you who have little ones who are into Skylanders, a really new development that's fabulous. And it is Self-Care Tuesday. So we're going to talk a little bit about sleep and the importance of sleep and how we get it. I need this talk more than anybody else who's listening. So, it's an important discussion, and you can all sit me down and have it with me after we talk about it. But it's important. Sleep, sleep, sleep. It's important. Okay, so we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back with the fabulous Grady P. Brown. Stick with us.
Hi, I'm Kara Kaczynski, the Pocket Occupational Therapist, and we're here in Dallas, Texas at the Future Horizons Autism Super Conference. So the book is the Special Needs School Survival Guide, and it's everything you wanted to know about school. It starts out with just different diagnoses that you might see, and then I explain them in clear terms, no technical jargon, and then each little diagnosis area has about, 50 to 100 activities that you can do at home or at school or cheaply and effectively. So it's just full of information that you can use right now. And the cool thing about it is at the end of every chapter are resources that you can use and access in the internet from a computer. And it's not just for kids with any diagnoses either. It's for kids that are just having trouble with handwriting or with dressing in school or transitions too. Well, both of my kids are on the autism spectrum, so it's important to me that when I learn something for other people, as I research it for occupational therapy, I want to try it at home. So then I take what works and I put it in a book, and what doesn't work gets thrown out the window. And the other thing is I've just started to research for webinars because our kids, if our kids are aging, so they start out these cute little babies with autism and now they're getting to be teenagers and young adults, and we need help with modifying the environment for them, transition planning, and especially for IEP goal writing for functional things that they can work on, not just handwriting, but then going beyond into the transition to young adulthood. Yeah, the misnomer at this point in the school systems is that we just do handwriting. So we are actually not handwriting teachers. We can modify or help rectify a grip that's inefficient. So if a child doesn't have that nice, pretty little tripod grasp, we can help to get that. However, when the kid's in 2nd or 3rd grade, then we look at efficiency. So if the grasp is efficient, if it's a quadrupod grasp, or if it's some kind of funky grasp, and the child can write efficiently, then we leave it alone. But if not, then we go to electronic accommodations. So OTs then can look at keyboarding and what kinds of keyboards would fit the student best. Also sensory processing, as the kids get older, it looks different. So we can look at sensory processing as it relates to function in the school. And then we also can look at behavior and transition planning. Other things we can do is work on seating. So if the child's having trouble sitting still in the classroom, we can modify that too. So not just handwriting, not just sensory, but we look at behavior, transitions, so anything that affects that student's school day. Right, so that's a really good question because sensory processing disorder did not make it into the last DSM, which is the way that medical professionals classify disorders. So it did make it into the classification under autism, but sensory processing disorder is very confusing. and a lot of therapists treat it differently. So the general overview is that sensory processing is either a heightened response to stimuli in the environment or a too low, which is hypo, response. So if the student perceives every noise around them is equally as important, or every feeling, so I'm sitting here, I can feel the chair, my sweater, the noise around me, then it's hard to concentrate and focus in the classroom on what you're supposed to be paying attention to. So we would use something, maybe a suggestion could be a weighted lap pad or some kind of fidget tool for the student to fidget with, or we can even look at special positioning in the classroom, so preferred seating. Then with sensory, transitions can be hard because any unexpected bump in the classroom or in line can set the child off into a fight or flight, which is when they really have a tantrum and freak out. So when they're in a fight or flight mode, they may fly off the handle for no apparent reason, maybe just being bumped by another student. So it's our job to be detectives and to figure out why the student is having that meltdown. So my CDs were created for my own kids my son in kindergarten didn't like the fire drills. So he was afraid to even step foot into the classroom because the fire alarm may sound. Of course, the school's not going to say, oh, let's just set up the fire alarm for your son, Bob. So we thought, where can we get a fire alarm? So we went into a recording studio and picked a whole plethora of sounds that you couldn't control, fireworks, thunder, sirens, and we put them on a CD, and I wrote nursery rhymes, changing the words to blender, blender, it's okay, or different little, Mary had a little lamb is something to do with thunder. So they're kind of fun, and that way the student can control the volume of the sound. It's not a listening therapy, there's no headphones involved, it's just a fun way to control sounds that you normally couldn't control. So they're for sale at my website, thepocketot.com.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're so thrilled that here in the studio with us live after a long trip to get here is the young author Grady P. Brown. Grady, welcome back to the show.
Good to be back. Thank you.
We had Grady on the show, I think it was 3 years ago, and so thrilling to have you back again. Grady, for those of you who don't know, is the author of the Young Guardians series. There are a total of 7 books now in this series. I've got the Young Guardians and the Genesis Spell here, the Young Guardians and the Great Darkness, and he brought with him the Young Guardians and the Revelation Orb, but there are 3 more books that are available on Kindle, which is a fabulous thing. So Grady, welcome back. You are 26 years old and a college student and a very prolific author, which is a fabulous thing. At 26, to have done this much in your life is pretty exciting. I want to start by asking, when did you decide that you wanted to be a writer?
Well, I've always had a story to tell, and when I was young, my parents would supply me whole truckloads of yellow tablets. Only back then, I didn't tell my stories in words, but with pictures.
Really? So you were drawing them first before you wrote them?
Right, and it was in 6th grade in middle school that I decided to tell my stories through words.
Wow. And so how old were you when you wrote your first book?
I'd have to say 16 or 17.
That's pretty amazing. And how long does it take you to write a book?
About 3 years.
I think that's a pretty average amount of time, right? For any author. I think that's pretty in keeping with what I've heard from other authors. That's a really long time to sustain focus, though. Do you just love it?
Oh, yes.
And do you find yourself getting into the story and seeing things from the character's point of view and living what it is that you're writing?
Yep. In fact, I can visualize the story by listening to music.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So when you sit down to write, do you already know what the whole story is going to be, or does it sort of figure itself out as you're writing?
I know the majority of the story,
Yeah.
but over time it evolves.
Wow. And you were saying to me before we went live that you're working on kind of a new project right now. Do you want to tell us what that is?
Yep. In fact, I'm working on multiple projects at the same time. I'm planning to, may I?
Yes, you may.
I'm doing a graphic novel script adaptation of this one, and then I will try to reach out to a comic book company to have it made into a graphic novel.
Really wonderful, Grady. That's so exciting. I think it's just I'm thinking about the fact that you're visualizing this whole thing in your head, and that's got to be a pretty exciting movie to watch in your head.
Oh yes.
Too much fun. You said that your parents gave you yellow tablets. I'm wondering how else did they support you because you had to have had some support to have started at 16 and have accomplished so much. How did they support you to get to the point where you've published books?
Well, both of my parents helped with editing, and because my dad's an attorney, he handled legal affairs.
Oh, it's always good to have an attorney in the family, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a very useful thing to do. Now, for audience members who are watching, if they haven't seen you before, you are very open about the fact that you are on the autism spectrum.
Yep.
And I'm wondering, is there any way in which having an autism spectrum disorder has prevented you from being able to do what you want to do, which is do books? Does it hold you back in any way?
When it comes to books, it does not.
Okay. We love hearing that because there are a lot of people right now talking about disability. And we have been saying around here, I don't know if you heard this, Howie Mandel said, let's not talk about disability, let's talk about this ability, because there's so much that people on the autism spectrum can do. And clearly, you are very capable. You are very, very able. But I think for the parents that are watching, they're probably wanting to know, but are there disabling aspects of where you fall on the spectrum? Are there things that you have a hard time with?
Well, I do have social difficulties. So oftentimes I'm somewhat of a recluse.
Well, and that kind of goes hand in hand with being an author, because if it takes you 3 years to write a book, writing a book is not something in some stages of it. I know later on when you're working on other things that it's interactive, but it can be a very solitary path to be an author.
Yeah.
But do you have people in your life that, I'm sure when you go to conventions and things, when you're doing your books, there's got to be people who are totally into what you're doing and into the genre of what you're doing. Do you have friends within that world?
Oh yes, I've got my best friends who I've known since elementary school, and I've got my cousins, and my family and family friends.
Very cool.
Especially my godmother, who helped me organize my book signing at WonderCon last year.
Oh, how nice. So you have a group of people around you helping you to get this done, and supporting you while you're getting it done, which I think is important for anyone who, in this world, but especially, when you're in the arts, and this is, you're an artist, you're writing and making graphic novel now. So you have to have that support team, which is wonderful. I think, Grady, we should take a break, and then I'd like to come back and talk about how autism presents in your life, when you were diagnosed, and those kinds of things.
All right.
All right, so we're going to take a break, and we're going to be back with more Grady P. Brown, author of the Young Guardian series, after this message.
What is autism?
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 I've been asking myself that for a very, very long time.
Let me think about that one.
Trying to
Jeez. Let me think. Oh man, that's a rough one. Yes.
Autism is a neurological disorder that affects many of our kids in different ways.
It's a learning disability that affects the cognitive functions of the brain.
A lot of people have the misconception that it's a disability, and it's really not.
I look at it as like a special gift.
When one person thinks differently from another.
It's an opportunity for everyone to learn to understand someone that's a little different than them. Autism is the ability to educate.
They're given so much talent in different areas.
To me, autism means a chance to be with and be around people you really care about. Autism is beautiful.
It's a way of seeing the world differently.
Always unique, totally intelligent, and
sometimes mysterious.
Happiness that comes out of my son's hard work.
Is a movement.
Unpredictable.
Abstract.
Awesome.
Love.
The field I want to work in.
Laughter, fun, joy. Autism is beautiful to me.
I want you to remember these 3 words. There is hope.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Here in the studio with us right now, we have the young author Grady P. Brown. He is the author of the Young Guardian series. There is a total of 7 books in the series. 3 that I have right here on the desk with me. The Young Guardians and the Genesis Spell, which is the first one. The Young Guardians and the Great Darkness, that's the second one. The Young Guardians and the Revelation Orb is the third one.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are 4 more that are available on Kindle. So you can get, now for the first 3, where can we get them in this form, in book form?
On Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com.
Okay, so you definitely want to check these out. Now, who is the intended audience? These are sci-fi books, but are they young adult or are these anyone?
Essentially teen and young adult.
Okay, so definitely if you've got some, especially I would think, I think it's good for both boys and girls, but especially the boys tend to be a little bit more interested in the fantasy sci-fi realm of things. Definitely get the Young Guardian series for good books for that age range. And we were talking with Grady before about the fact that he is very open about the fact that he's on the autism spectrum. And I'm wondering if we could just back up a little bit and talk about at what age were you diagnosed?
Relatively young, because my mom has had experience in working with autistic children. She recognized my symptoms right away.
Yes. So how old were you? Were you like 3 or 4?
I don't know the exact age, but
Okay.
that sounds right.
Okay. And back then, there were lots of different designations of autism. There was PDD-NOS, there was classic autism, and there was Asperger's. Do you know where you fell in that sort of?
Well, I think I'm more towards the Asperger's section.
Okay. And when did you know about an autism spectrum disorder? When did you find out that that's, that you were in that category? Were you little, or were you older?
I was in high school when I found out what autism was and that I had it.
Okay. And how did you find out?
My parents told me.
And this is a big topic that people talk about all the time. There's even a study that's being done up in Canada that's called the Elephant in the Room study, because and I don't know if your parents have participated yet, but they're asking parents and people who are on the autism spectrum that to give information about how they told the person and how the person got the information and what it was like. So what do you remember about that conversation? Was it a good conversation? Was it hard to hear that?
Well, at first it was somewhat hard because I knew some of my classmates had it, and I saw how much hardship they were enduring.
Okay.
And I wondered if I would be enduring that same hardship as well.
Okay. And then do you remember feeling like, oh no, or was there a sense of, oh, okay, this is who I am. I'm no different than I was 5 minutes ago. I just have a name for it.
Well, I did like the fact that I did have it because it allowed me to get as far in life as I have.
Yeah. So, because I love it when we get to the point, I'm all the time saying to my son, who's about to be 13, that autism is not something to be ashamed of. It's not something to feel bad about. It's you're different, but different in ways that are indescribable and sometimes really wonderful and lucky to be different that way. That there are some things that I'm so glad that he is different that way. And then when we talk about the things that he struggles with, it's funny to me that I don't think of those anymore as being part of the autism. I think it's a byproduct of the autism and can be dealt with. Does it seem that way to you too?
I think so.
And so I'm wondering, for the parents that are out and there and listening to this, and they're thinking about talking to their child and telling them that they have a diagnosis, is there any advice that you would give them about how to talk about it?
Well, if you're able to identify the symptoms in your child as soon as possible, then I recommend you let them know as soon as possible. That way you can give them the treatment they need as soon as possible.
I love that advice. And what about for young people who may already know that they're on the spectrum? Do you have any advice for them about what it's like? Because you're an adult now and you're successful and you're going to college and you've published 7 books. I mean, I know people who are, look, I'm trying to get one of my books done, right? And I just can't find the time and get to the point where I get it done. So I'm in awe that you have 7 books and you're 26 years old. To me, that's high success. So what advice do you have for those young teens on the spectrum about what life is like and what you want to say to them?
Just that depending on which part of the spectrum you're on, it may be hard now, but if you pursue your goal, if you have one, the rewards will be worthwhile.
Yeah. And so as you look into the future, Grady, you've already said that you are working on a graphic novel, and then during the break you were telling me that there's a whole spin-off series that's related to the Young Guardians, but it's a little bit different that you're working on. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Essentially, it takes place 5,000 years into the future, and it revolves around a futuristic society and how the superheroes of that time adapt to it. In fact, the main character, it will be one of the most powerful characters I ever created, but he will also be one of the most psychologically vulnerable.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And so that's you're working on that right now. That's the new book you're working on?
Yes.
And do we have a title yet?
I'm still working on it.
Okay. All right. Well, you'll keep us posted on that. So what do you want to do? What do you want to be able, when you look back when you're 50, what do you want to say that you accomplished?
I would like to have my works made into graphic novels and films.
Yes.
Essentially, my ambitions for my work is unlimited.
Absolutely. I love that. And so if somebody were going to make a film of the Young Guardians and the Genesis spell, is there an actor that you would go, I would love to have that actor in the film? Is there somebody that you already have in mind?
Well, I think Daisy Ridley would be, from Star Wars. Would play the main character, the main female lead, Tanisha Dolera.
All right, I love that.
And I think she'll look good with the elf ears.
I love that. I absolutely love that. So Grady, I guess I don't know if I've asked you this before, but did you do these illustrations that are on the book cover?
No, I was assigned an illustrator by my publisher.
Okay, but you yourself are doing the drawings for your graphic novel.
No, I am not. I'm writing the script, with the dialogue and sound effects.
Okay, but then an illustrator will illustrate them.
Correct.
Okay, great. Because all of a sudden I was like, oh, maybe he drew these. Okay, but I see that Victor Gaiza is the illustrator. Mm-hmm. Okay, fabulous. Well, so once again, tell people where can they go to get these books?
On Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com.
Okay. Wonderful. And, young teens, young adults, perfect?
Yeah, teens, young adults, anyone in that area.
Grady, we're so impressed with you and what you've accomplished and what you continue to accomplish. And I know that you're somebody who gives us all inspiration. So I want to thank you for being with us today, and thank you for taking the time to drive all the way to get here. Do you have a Facebook page or do you have a website where people can go to find out more?
I have a WordPress account and a Twitter page.
Okay, so what's your Twitter handle so people can tweet at you?
Guardians Young.
Guardians Young.
All one word, lowercase.
Okay, fabulous. So tweet to Grady if you want to know about more. Thank you so much for the work that you do. And thank you. You brought me a book and you brought one for Nancy too, and I know that she will absolutely love that. We really are looking forward to reading these. Thank you so much for being with us.
You're welcome.
All right, we're going to take a break and be back with more Autism Live after these messages.
Nick was diagnosed with autism in 1994 at the age of 4. He received 5 years of therapy from CARD that eventually faded out. Nick recovered from autism in 2001.
The song I'm about to perform is by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. CARD helped many patients, myself, to recover to this level now.
Cheryl and Mike's son, Jack Riley, was diagnosed with autism in 2010 at age 2. He's been receiving therapy from CARD for a year and a half. Today, Cheryl, Mike, and Nick meet for the first time.
I'm curious as to what you remember.
I certainly remember pretty long sessions, and I'd be frustrated if I would make mistakes. I mean, I remember one time I had to count a row of 6 blocks, kept messing up. That was really difficult.
No.
I need it. I need it.
At what point do you recall hearing the word autism?
I was able to figure out what I was going through without anybody having to tell me.
Our concern is if it's a big secret to hide. I don't know what we can say.
No one ever told you, you just discerned
But the
it?
reason I'm comfortable talking about this is because I felt it. In therapy, I certainly began questioning why people reacted as they did based on what I said and did. Particularly because of difficulties I was facing in school. It got to a point where I wanted to understand why it was. I entered while still going through therapy and still showing significant signs of the mental condition. Even after I'd improved to a significant extent, there were those who still gave me a hard time for it.
Did it hurt your feelings when you were in school, the way that kids...
Oh, absolutely, because it was bullying, it was harassment.
That scares us.
They called me names. I was basically, when it came to sports and PE, I was usually the last kid chosen.
Did teachers intervene?
Fortunately, not really. I mean, it was just so hard for me to talk about it because of how ashamed I felt. Certainly the first few years of elementary school, I don't think I really had the most supportive teachers. I mean, I remember my mom told me how my first grade teacher once said that she thought I had no chance of getting anywhere. And going away to college and out of state and being the only person from my old school district has made a difference. It's just really improved my social life tremendously because I got to be me, because with nobody knowing about my past, I wasn't faced with these misconceptions and prejudgments.
Do you tell people, new people that you meet?
No, that's not the first thing I will ever
No, I would hope
tell
it's not the
and
first thing.
You know what? In most cases, I never do, because while it's a part of my past, it doesn't define who I am. I mean, just thinking back to the very beginning, pretty much each episode, autism, what, not who.
I want to tell you right now, though, I'm so impressed with you.
Likewise.
I want you to know that.
Likewise. I mean, your son really inspires me just as much because I'll tell you anytime.
I adore him, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't challenging.
I mean,
it's cost me the stuff that like career things, goals. I don't care about those anymore. I work at night. I'm tending bar. Not that I'm too good for that. I'm just saying that's what I do. I want him to have a chance.
Right.
And you inspire me now.
Thank you. The feeling goes both ways. The feeling's mutual.
Before you leave today, we would like you to meet Jack.
I would love to.
This is Nick. Hi, Nick.
Hey, Jack Riley.
All right, should we try this? I'm gonna try to take a picture of all of you. 1, 2, and 3.
Jack Riley, you rock.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I wanted to take a couple of seconds to answer a couple of questions that came in from a viewer, because it kind of goes hand in hand with the guest that we just had. Somebody said, "Hi Shannon, just a comment. While watching your mindful tip," because I had a mindful tip where I talked about clicking the pen, they said, "Sounds like just like my boy when he is ultra focused and he tunes everything out. Maybe our autistic kids are ultra zen and truly in the moment." And, you know, it's funny because just as Grady was leaving, his dad was here with him, and what a lovely thing to get to meet his dad. And Grady was telling me that he has lost 28 pounds since the first of the year, and I told him he lost it and I found it. And I said, "What's your secret?" And he was talking about the paleo diet, and so we were having a conversation about that, and I said, "Man, you just, you just do a really good job at everything that you do." And his dad said, everything is focused. He has laser focus, and if he sets his mind out to do something, he's going to do that. And it's exactly, then I looked at your question, it's exactly that kind of thing. And I was having a conversation with somebody just last night where I was talking about how sometimes our kids on the autism spectrum don't have the ability to filter. That when we see kids who have intense sensory issues, they aren't able to prioritize the different things that are happening around them and smooth them out or gray them out or not attend to them. So as I'm sitting here, there's a lot of sensory things that are going on, right? There's an air conditioner behind me. Even though we're in a semi-soundproof room, there are little noises that I can hear coming from different things, from an elevator that's, I can hear the whoosh from the elevator behind me. Hopefully that it never picks it up on my mic. And I've got fluorescent lights that are buzzing and tinkling, and every once in a while I can see Kelby move in the other room, right? I kind of fuzz all that out. Sometimes something will happen and it'll draw my attention for just a split second to it, but I have the ability to focus sometimes on what I'm talking about with you. For kids with autism, they might start to focus on the whoosh of the elevator and not be able to focus on the rest. And one of the things that I have seen is that when we give skills to people who are on the autism spectrum of how to inhibit a response, because if all of this is happening all the time and it's just sensory, what happens is you feel beat up and you shut down. You go inside, and maybe internally you focus on one small thing. It's just a reality. And that's not just people with autism, that's all of us. It's just where the delineation of where you shut down is probably, it's, people who have not had the ability, autism or not, to filter are going to shut down quicker for their own self-preservation, right? But when we give the skill to an individual with autism, and we can, how to filter, what we see a lot of times is someone who gets a laser focus on something and becomes wildly successful. So I think you're not far off. I think that our kids do have the ability to be Zen masters and be in the moment and accomplish something. I always go back to Temple Grandin talking about spinning the metal plate on her bed, and that she loved to do that and wanted to do just that. And I think it helped her to hone her focus. But if all she ever did was spin the metal plate, she wouldn't have accomplished all that she did, right? And the world would have been a much poorer place for it. But her mother said to her, here are the limits. You get an hour a day, go spin the plate, and then you have to go muck out the stalls, and you have to do this, and you have to do that, so that it gave her that balance. And she's the one who says all the time, she would love to sit and do the plate, but she had those limits of this is when you can do it. Then it becomes a choice, right? We're going to talk more about that in a few minutes. But okay, so the other question, same viewer who wrote in and said, hello, wise Shannon. Oh, you poor thing for thinking that. Watch the Oscars with the family. My boy still doesn't quite get real world versus pretend and acting. He felt one of the women on screen looked like a man. He said, I saw an actor who used to be a boy. I asked to get clarification, and then my husband and his sister chimed in and asked more questions, almost like an inquisition or challenge to his comment or observation. How can we ask more nicely to get clarification, short of voicing over the other voices? My son is the most patient person. He so nicely answered us crazy questioners. I'll have to ask him tomorrow if we drive him nuts with our questions, and thank you so much. That's from our haircut mom. Well, you know, I would be interested in knowing what he says. And if he doesn't get defensive, like maybe he enjoys the questions. And it may be that he doesn't. And if he says, no, I don't like it and it makes me feel weird when you guys ask me that, or I really wanted to watch the show or whatever, then I would really want to start to give him the skills to say to people, you know what, can we talk about this later on? I really don't want to be asked all these questions. Or how about if we set a limit? I'm willing to answer 4 questions. Something so that he himself has some control over it. And that could be easy enough that, you know, when you see, because I know sometimes we're so protective of our kids, and when your husband starts asking questions and the aunt starts asking questions and you were asking questions and you go, oh, what just happened? I wanted my question answered. I want everybody else to shut up. It could be that you become the prompter in that circumstance and say to your son, are you getting tired of answering questions? Because, you know, you can say, I'm tired of asking questions. And that also signals to the other people, maybe they should, you know, dial back. But I wouldn't jump to that until you ask him. He might have loved it, right? We don't want to assume. And I so understand, because sometimes when we've had kids who don't always voice things, so when they do voice something and they're part of the conversation, you just want to crawl in there. You want to know everything that's in there, like, oh, why did you say that? And what made you think of that? And because I don't know about you, I want to be inside my kid's head more than I want to be any other place in the world. Like if I could just crawl in there and look around and just see what's there. I don't need to dust or move anything. I just want to know what's in there, right? But I have found that he'll tolerate that for a sliver of time, and then he doesn't like it. And you know, that's okay, because I wouldn't want somebody to get in and crawl around in my head. I wouldn't, right? That's my private space, and I'm willing to share things, obviously. But so, you know, I think to myself all the time, well, you know, that's the mom in me. I understand the desire to want to know what's going on, but I think it takes a certain amount of patience. That if you see that in, you know, I'm just thinking about the Oscars, there's a lot going on. Usually there's food involved and there's people and we're trying to watch and react and everything. I think it's important to give all of our kids the ability to say, I don't really want to answer that right now. And I remember sitting there watching with my husband and a friend of ours, and at one point, I don't remember who it was that asked somebody something, and they said, oh, you know what, can I answer that during a commercial? I want to listen. Right? So it's totally okay to teach to our kids on the autism spectrum. And the whole thing about real world versus pretend, boy, I think it's good that he is asking and noticing, because the line is really blurred right now. There's so much television with all the reality TV. My son will say to me, is that somebody who's acting, or is that a real thing? And, you know, it used to be that I could answer him very definitively and very easily. And now there are times where I'm like, well, it's supposed to be this, but you know, it's supposed to be reality TV, but I think that, you know, if you stop and consider that there are cameras there, and I'll be honest with you, I think a lot of people don't get that anymore. And I don't think that's just people who are on the autism spectrum. I think reality TV has blurred that so badly for people, which is why when you see people being interviewed on the street and they, you know, what they believe is real is, you go, oh, no. So I think you're probably okay. He's going to get it more and more. And the fact that he's asking the question is really good, really good. All right, keep us posted. We're going to take a break and go to the A word now, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about what's happening with the Skylanders. But first, the A word. This is a documentary that follows a little boy, Jack Riley, diagnosed at the age of 2, and the early intensive behavioral intervention that has helped him to be able to do all the things that he wants to be able to do. So take a look. Here is the A word.
A. B. Good word. You say T. Oh, there's Miss Jessica. Hello. Hi. Say hi. Hi, what do you see? What is it? What's that? Giraffe. He's getting really good at that. How about that guy? Who's this guy?
We have this one program called NVI, which is non-vocal imitation. So he basically has to imitate whatever we do. So we were working on object manipulation, and then Tuesday, I tried doing more gross motor things like clapping hands or standing or jumping, and he was able to imitate all of those.
Ready? Do this. Yay! Very good. Okay, here you go. Who's hiding now? Me? Do this. Good job. Okay, here you go. Okay, let's do another one. Okay, ready? Do this. Yay! All right. Here you go, Rockstar. Oh, that's so cool. All right, you ready? Do this. Good job. Very good.
So that was actually a fine motor action with a touch nose.
Oh, yeah. How did that happen? You want more? You want more of this? More? No. Okay. Good asking. We'll do a couple more actions, okay? Do this. Good job. Do this. Good job. Do this. Good try. Over here. Can you try? Do this. There you go. All right. Here you go.
He's been doing a lot more on his own, even just when I attempt him by just holding the object, not necessarily asking him to imitate more. Cat, that's right. He does do it on his own now, which is really cool.
Good asking, buddy. Ouch. Line that up. That one's up. Oh, there you go. See? How many up do you want to go?
You touch the block?
God, what is it?
Block.
Good job. Sorry, I'm just curious.
This is cool. Okay. I'm interested too. Touch shoes. Where's the shoes? That's a good try. Okay. Let's see. You touch crab. Where's the crab? Can you touch it with your finger though? Thank you. Did you see that? What is it? Crab. See, crab. That was so funny. I didn't specify, huh? Touch block. Good job. What is it? What is this? Block. This is his receptive labels, so what I just did basically. And our supervisor had written down things that's in his environment that he might not know or that he might know the labels to, or if he's just seen it or heard the label for it, not necessarily know how to say it per se. And I just went through block, guitar, bear, plane, cat with him, and so he actually knows all of them. So I'm actually going to go through his environment just to see other things like shoes. He actually knew almost everything on here except fork, I think. Yeah. So that's actually really impressive. You amaze me every day, kiddo.
We're taking a walk. We just finished dinner, getting ready to go to bed.
But part of our after dinner tradition suddenly has been to take a walk. Make sure. Say, come on, Mama. Come on, Mama. Right, Jack? And then we say, stop. Go. 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 Stop. Go. 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 So we're practicing our stops and goes. Stop. Go. Go. Good stopping. Go. Stop. Go. Good stopping, Jack. Stop. Go. Go. Good stopping. Good job, love. Look at me. Say bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Love that precious boy, and he has grown up to be a precious older boy. He's still a young boy, though. Wonderful, wonderful family. Please do yourself a favor and use what they have done in this documentary to help you. And there's so many different ways that it can help you to see the arc of ABA and how they teach a child something, to see what the positive reinforcement is like, to see how the child grows and flourishes, to see that along the way the parents have doubts and go, this is taking so much time and this is disrupting our family life, and then to see where they end up and how grateful that they are that they took the time. It's really amazing service that they did to the autism community. So use it, share it. It has its own YouTube page. I wanted to shift now to a great story that's all over the news today, that Autism Speaks has paired up with the Skylanders to create, there's the new set of Skylanders, that they're superchargers, and they've created them in the official blue and white colors of Autism Speaks, and they are now available as part of the Light It Up Blue campaign. Splat and Trigger Happy and their vehicles, the Splat Splasher and Gold Rusher, are now available in that blue and white. In-game colors for the characters and their vehicles also changed to reflect the special toys. They're, I think that this is a wonderful, wonderful thing. One of the people, Senior Vice President of Skylanders Product Management at Activision, said that Skylanders play a special role in the lives of the kids that are on the autism spectrum. The entire Skylanders team was deeply committed and proud to bring these special toys to life. And it does mean that there will be money donated. My understanding is that it will be to multiple nonprofits, not just to Autism Speaks, because they want to make a difference in the autism community. So they are available in the US as of yesterday, and they will be available in Canada as of April 1st. So a very fun thing. For those of you who don't know, because Kelby said to me, I don't know what are Skylanders. For those of you who don't know, that there are many different, this is a new way in which you can enjoy video games now. And Skylanders was the first one to do this, but now there are other companies that do this. Disney Infinity has one as well, but you buy a starter kit, and there are many different kinds of starter kits now, but it comes with a base that plugs into your, and you buy it for a system, whether that's PlayStation or your Wii or whatever. The base plugs in, and it comes usually with a couple of characters. And when you take the little figurine and you set it on the base, on the screen, this whirlwind happens, and that character goes into the game, and you play as that character. Our kids love it. And there is something about it that's particularly wonderful for our kids. I know we've talked before on the show about activating mirror neurons. And this is a particularly very exciting way of looking at autism. One of the things that we know from the studies that have been done, and not enough have been done, but from the studies that have been done, we know that neurotypical people, when they're watching a television program, let's say we're watching Olympics and we're seeing somebody doing the jump, Eddie the Eagle jump. What is that called? Ski jump. I've never been ski jumping, and the chances that I'm ever going to go ski jumping in my life, I would say minimal to zero, right? And yet, if you hooked me up to EEG equipment and had me watching Eddie the Eagle do his ski jump, the fact of the matter is that my mirror neurons, a place in my brain, would light up, and it would light up as if I was doing the activity. So it would be very similar to, this is why they call it mirror neurons, as if I was doing it myself. So I'm not engaging in the activity, but the part of my brain that, excuse me, that would be woken up and light up if I were doing that activity lights up. Excuse me. So that's called the mirror neurons. And with a neurotypical person, we watch an activity and it lights up. For kids on the autism spectrum, excuse me, they either don't light up or they don't light up as much. Video games help. So that's that subject. I'm coughing. We're going to go. We'll be back after these messages.
Hi everyone, welcome back. For the month of March, we're going to be making a rain stick. And what's really cool about this project is that the steps are pretty simple, so your kids are going to be able to practice a lot of their fine motor skills when making it. Another bonus is that once the rain stick is completed, you guys can use it for a bunch of different programs under cognition and executive functions. Things that deals with, seeing versus hearing, or using it also for auditory memory. But we'll get to that later. First, we gotta make the rain stick. So the materials you'll be needing are a paper towel roll, tape, paper, aluminum foil, rice, and any kind of materials you want to use to decorate your rain stick with. All right, let's get to it. So the first thing you wanna do is get a piece of tin foil that's about double the length as your paper towel roll. I got this, and now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna roll it up, like so, and I'm gonna wrap my paper towel roll with it. Okay, and don't worry if it's too messy, okay? This is just to give us a basic shape. Now once I've got this, I'm gonna make it a little bit tighter, and I'm gonna roll it and stick it inside of my paper towel roll. I want to make sure that it goes all the way through the paper towel roll, and what this does, it acts like a buffer so the rice will go down slowly through the tube. And see how that's nice and in there? Okay, now that I have that, I'm going to take a piece of paper and cover one side. And I'm going to take a piece of tape and secure it over the bottom. All right, now that I've got this on, I'm gonna take my rice and pour it in. All right, now that I got the rice in there, I'm gonna seal the other side. Now that this is constructed, don't forget to use your imagination to decorate this any way that you want. And here's my finished rain stick. Don't forget you can decorate yours however you see fit. I decided to use tape and pipe cleaners, but you could always paint it, add sparkles, just whatever you feel like doing. Now that this is done, let's take a listen to it. What does that sound like to you? I think it sounds like rain too. What does rain look like? Ah, that is what rain looks like. You can ask them a whole bunch of different questions using this after it's already been made. Well, until next time, craft on. Bye guys.
Can you see me? Can you see me flying by your side?
Welcome back to Autism Live. Excuse me, I was fine and then we come back. In any case, it's time for our self-help tip because it's self-care Tuesday. And what I particularly wanted to talk about this week, because I don't want to talk about it. So when you don't want to talk about something, excuse me, it is the thing to talk about. It's sleep. Catching those Z's, catching them in the right way, and how important sleep is on this journey. It's important for all of us. We know that when we don't get sleep, when they've done studies on depriving people of sleep, that it starts to shut down your major ability to cope. And eventually other systems start to shut down. That it is important that we get sleep, that we get enough sleep, and that we get good quality sleep. And that's hard, especially when you are somebody who is experiencing anxiety and there are more things to do. It's really, really hard. But we have to prioritize it. And I'm hearing myself say this because this is the talk that my husband had with me the other day, right? So this is as much and more for me as it is for you. And I said, when we're all done, somebody needs to sit down and have this talk with me. But if we don't get enough sleep, then we don't get to be here in the long term. So it's important that we do a couple of different things. And one is that we talk about antecedent modifications that we're talking about all this week. See, it all goes hand in hand. There is antecedent modification for sleep, and I'm talking about that for us as the adults, but for those of you who have children who have sleep issues, we can take a page for them as well. So how do we set ourselves up for success with sleep? That means that we don't have a whole lot to eat before we go to bed, and that's like a 2-hour window before we go to bed. That we don't have things that are caffeinated in the second half of the day, that we don't have things that are loaded with sugar in the second half of the day, that we don't engage in activities within a 2-hour range before when we're supposed to go to sleep that would rile us up or get us all, I know some people who like to exercise 2 hours before they go to bed because that slows them down. But if you're exercising right before you go to bed, it's going to be hard to go to sleep, right? And in that 2-hour window, I think a lot of times people think, and I have been guilty of this, I'm like, oh, okay, well, so, what are you supposed to do during that 2 hours before you go? You're not eating, you're not doing anything to rouse you up, you're not exercising. So what are you doing during those 2 hours? That there is a ritual and a regimen that gets you ready for that. And when we're talking about small kids, we're talking about watching things on TV or on a device that are soothing. We can do that as adults. That if whatever the bedtime ritual is, that we start it well before the moment in which we're supposed to send them to bed, right? I know with a teenager, because I'm so tired at night, I'll say to him, okay, you got to go to bed, but there's like a half an hour's worth of stuff that he's got to do before he can go to bed. He has to take his supplements, he has to do the self-care regimen. In some cases it means taking a shower. Other times, he's mostly a morning shower person, but there's a whole set of things that he needs to do in order to be ready for going to sleep. And if you don't already have a regimen, it's great to set one up. And if you can make part of the regimen setting up things for the morning so that clothes are laid out, that's a great antecedent modification because it's not a rile up thing. It helps you to peace of mind to know that when you get up in the morning, you're going to be a little less rushed. It sets up the day for success. So that can be part of the regimen. But it's like working backwards. Goals. So if the bedtime that you want to be in bed is at 10 o'clock, that means that everything that starting at 8 o'clock has to do to get you ready towards that 10 o'clock thing. This is the hardest thing in the world for me, right? I don't know why I have such a hard time with that. And then making sure that the environment in the bedroom is set up for success. That we hear from experts all the time that your bedroom should be a place that is for sleep, not for anything else. So that if your desk is in your bedroom, there's got to be a way that everything gets put away and closed down like a roll top desk or a thing that folds up so that you're not staring at your desk. That they encourage us, although I can't imagine, not to have televisions in the bedroom. To me, this is torture. To not, and although, we probably turn on the television in our bedroom once every 6 months, but the idea of not having one there just makes me want to burst into tears. But the experts say that if we truly want to get good sleep, that the only thing that happens in that room is sleep. So there you go. That's what the experts say. I'm clearly not an expert in getting sleep. And that for those of us who have sleep apnea, that we do everything that we can, and there are many different things that we can do, but super duper important that we follow it through and work it out I'm struggling trying to be able to use a CPAP. Thank goodness for Emily Island, who was with us a couple weeks ago. She's going to give me the in-home tutorial so that I can actually do this. But if we don't set up a circumstance, your bed has to be comfortable and inviting. You have to be able to eliminate light enough to be able to sleep the number of hours. You've got to do the regimen, get yourself ready to go to sleep, and then actually get yourself in the position where it could happen. Make it a priority. I'm trying really hard, because if we don't, and it's very easy for me to poo-poo and say, oh, you know, what can happen? But I'm reminded of a young man who grew up around the corner from me, and somebody that I went to school with, and he was just 2 years younger than me. And 2 years ago, he passed away, complications from sleep apnea. So I am reminded by my family on a regular basis that if there's one thing that we can learn from that, is that none of us, and we were all just like, what a waste, what a waste. He'd been given a CPAP and couldn't use it, and I respect that, because I'm right there with him, but I don't want to be right there with him. So I say that lovingly to myself and lovingly to you. We need to prioritize the sleep. It has to happen. It's when our brain heals. It's when our body heals. It's got to happen. So prioritize the sleep, the sleep, the sleep. And I'll think good thoughts for you, and you think good thoughts for me. Let's meet back here more rested, shall we? All right, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back with some of the things that you guys have been writing in on the Facebook. So stick with us.
It's every parent's desire for their child to have a great start in life. Yet there is a condition affecting more children's lives than pediatric cancer, diabetes, and AIDS combined. Autism strikes 1 in every 150 children.
Today, 1 in 110 kids in the U.S. will be diagnosed with autism. That is a huge jump from 30 years ago, when it was 1 in 30,000.
Startling new report finds the number of children with autism is skyrocketing. The Centers for Disease Control estimates 1 in 68 children has a form of autism. Now, that's a 30% increase in just 2 years.
Well, a lot of the children with all the accomplishments over the last 20 years, I'm thrilled.
I think what kept me was the feeling that, you know, I would have a parent come to my office late at night at UCLA and just fall apart. And this is a long time ago, and there were much less back then in terms of services and knowledge and so on. And I would just sit with the family and the parents and walk them through and try to take away some of their fears, you know. And at that point I realized, I think the thing that's actually most important to me is that process. I mean, thank God that I've been very, very lucky and blessed to have so many incredible clinicians join me along the way and just develop CARD in such an amazing, magnificent way. That I could, you know, for me it was more really about how can I help the families? What can I do for the moms, the dads, you know? It is just, and I feel like, you know, there's no way I would ever really know, because I haven't had my own child go through this, but I've experienced it with people a lot of times.
Hi, this is Megan. I'm in first grade all by myself. My teachers are so fabulous. I like to read books. I like to go to my friends' birthday parties. I like to invite my friends to my birthday parties. I once had a sleepover with a friend. I like to have play dates with my friend. I'm the best reader in my class. I like to go to the library. I like to read different series of books. And here's how I learned to do all these things. By my card friends and Dr. Grandpichet. Thank you, card friends and Dr. Grandpichet.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hey, welcome back to Autism Live. We heard you. Everybody wants
macaroni and cheese.
Yeah, but we're gonna make it allergy free. But here's what's the crazy part of this macaroni and cheese. It's actually healthy.
And it tastes good.
Yeah, it tastes really good.
That's the most important part.
So we're gonna start. We got our water boiling. There's so many variations on the pasta. We're using today a corn pasta. We can verify with the manufacturer that we have a GMO-free product. So let's go ahead and put that in there.
Ooh,
and if you don't mind, stir that up for
Sure.
me, my friend.
Now it's sticking a little bit to the bottom. Is that okay?
We maybe add a little more high heat oil and spread that around again. One thing you gotta know about gluten-free pasta, if you overcook this, it becomes mush. Let's move this guy over to the other burner so you can see what I'm doing. And now we're gonna start with the old macaroni and cheese sauce. What's great is there's a lot of choices for, you know, different soups. And the way that I look at soups, and again, please follow the recipe on your screen right now. I don't like to measure very often. But what I like to use is a creamy butternut squash soup. So this soup is great because it adds a lot of flavor to the dish, but also gives people another serving of vegetables. With kids, we don't want to over season. Maybe with the adults, we can season some for the kids first, pull it out, serve them, and then add a little more, you know, garlic powder or onion powder or other types of things into your dish. So the next most important thing on this recipe is we're gonna add in a thickener and the faux cheese. Now some people like their sauce really thick, so you just add in more cornstarch or more arrowroot, so that's not a big deal. How's that doing? You think it's ready?
I think it's done.
Okay, so why don't we switch? I'll take that, you do that.
Okay.
And I'm going to strain this bad boy here. Here, let me turn that off.
Okay.
Or we're gonna cause trouble again.
Trouble in Lisa's kitchen.
Yeah, no!
That's another show.
Don't, yeah, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and get this all strained. It's a good consistency. So I'm gonna check to make sure our pasta is cooked. So really you just wanna make sure, just like any pasta, it's a little bit squeezy, a little bit. Nice. Dude, good job. We're good.
Looks yummy.
So even though the cheese is not totally melted, it's okay, don't panic. What's important is that you're gonna love this recipe once you eat it. What I enjoy most about this recipe is that it smells good, but this stuff is amazing. So if you don't mind, I'm going to serve you some up, and you can maybe blow a little bit on it so you don't burn your mouth. Sorry, I'm once a mom, always a mom.
Just like we tell our kids.
I know, right?
God, I can't wait. I'm excited.
So I'm going to give a shot of this too, but
oh my gosh, that is so good.
This is the ultimate comfort food. So
it's so
isn't
good.
it good?
And I'm not just saying that. It is really good. It literally tastes like something our kids would really like, and that sweetness is really, really, really good.
So the bonus for us is that when we're serving this to our kids, they're actually getting a full serving of vegetables in this. So instead of just eating a bunch of carbs and worthless calories, you're actually getting some good stuff in this. And we'll be back next time. I hope you join us again here on Autism Live. We're really loving the feedback, and if you have additional feedback, here's how you get it to us. You can send it to us via email at autismlive@gmail.com. On Facebook, facebook.com/autismlive. And also there's thousands of recipes waiting for you to discover them with pictures and different things on the Taka website. So you can hit Taka on the web, takanow.org, and we'll be back. Hopefully we'll get to do this again.
I had so much fun.
Maybe we'll have a little wine, but you got to join us next time. We'll look forward to seeing you then.
Bye guys, we're gonna keep eating.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We wanted to talk a little bit about the question of the day because you guys have been writing things in on the question of the day. The question was, what is the one thing that you know will set you or your child off? Because, you know, self-knowledge is good, and we are going to be talking this week all about antecedent modifications. Okay, so somebody wrote in and said expecting him to sit easy for long periods of time. And I don't know how old he is, but the truth of the matter is that, you know, I know people who are 80 years old, that's hard to do. And it's context is everything, right? Because one of the things I hate about the way we educate here in the United States is that we don't take that into consideration. It's all about conformity in public schools, that we have desks, we sit in the desks, and we're going to train you to sit in the desk for 7 hours a day. And regardless of whether it's good for you or it's a good plan, we're going to have you do this. And it's so funny to look at people later on in life. I've been a classroom teacher and I've been a college professor, and it's funny, to look way back years later, because people who are athletic and going to end up being Olympic athletes, they can't sit still at a desk for 7 hours a day. It's just not going to happen for them, right? But that's not a bad thing, right? When you look at comedians, people who are very successful in their life now, they were the people who got in trouble the most in the classroom for speaking out of turn or commenting on something, right? So it's all context. So my question is it just through conformity to get him to sit still for long periods of time, or is it that he actually isn't capable of sitting still for a long period of time? Because, you have to be able to sit still for a certain amount of time. I've been on planes with once I was on a plane with a basketball team, and I can't remember which basketball team it was, but what I noticed was it was a long flight. I think it was from New York to LA, and that they got up in regular intervals and walked the aisle and were standing and talking to each other. They just didn't want to sit still the whole time. But they were capable of sitting still when they had to, when the seatbelt light came on. That they were capable of it. So I think this goes back to a conversation that we're going to have in a second about, we want to have the skill so that we can do it if we have to do it, but forcing people to do it on a regular basis, I don't think that that's always the best way to be. Okay, another person wrote in and said, if his routine gets disturbed. I think a lot of us have that. School vacation, and they said, laugh out loud. If he doesn't get the last word. Oh, I know a lot of people like that, myself included. Changes of routine, if I move things about in his room, if I don't put it back in the exact place, anything that gets on his nerves, basically. Another person says if she's told she can't do something. I hate that too. Trying to get her to drink before bed. Depending on the day, depending upon the hour, could be anything. Mike Hipple wrote in and said that I forgot to do something. I hate that too, Mike. Leaving the house, or if he's not good, leaving his room or stepping in his room. Okay. Another person who says saying the word no. Oh, don't we all have a little bit of problem with that? Telling her no is what will set her off. And hand dryers in public restrooms. Okay, that's a pretty good list of things. And I wanted to read some of those off because for all of those, we can work on them with antecedent modification. That Mike, I'm going to take the one that you said because I'm like that way. I hate it when I forget something. Oh, I just hate it. I get so frustrated with myself and it takes me right out of the moment. So if we look at antecedent modification for forgetting something, what are the things that we can do before we forget something to avoid it ever happening? And the truth of the matter is I put my little skills thing out here because there's a lot of lessons in skills that teach with memory. And you can go to skills. It's Skills for Autism, FOR, autism.com. And the 800 number is 877-975-4559. Want to make sure that I get that. But there's a whole lesson, there are a whole series of lessons about memory and what you can do to help yourself to remember. Because I think far too often we have an unrealistic expectation that, well, I will remember it. I'm going to will myself to remember it. And the studies show that that isn't what really is effective, that people who remember things are people who have built in ways to remind themselves to do it. I always crack up at my husband that if he has to go do something, every place that we've ever lived, there has to be something by the door that's like on the door, above the doorknob, that he can balance things on so that he remembers to take and do it. That there was, rent needed to be paid today, and so the rent check was sitting on top of the doorknob and I couldn't leave the house. But he will get it done because it's there and he knows he can't leave the house, and it will fall when he turns the doorknob, and it will remind him. So it gets it done. Other people have timers. They have Apple Watches. They have their phone that goes off and says, hey, you need to be here, you need to be there. Yes, in the old days, before there were smartphones, people used to tie string on their finger to remind them to do something. People had day planners. We had filofaxes that I never went anywhere without my filofax because I couldn't remember where I was supposed to be, when I was supposed to be. My life was complicated. So, what we do beforehand is actually very indicative of whether we will in fact remember something. It's one of the top skills. If you read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, it's all about utilizing, understanding what's important, what isn't important, but utilizing things to help you to be able to remember and follow through with things. For other things, everybody talking about routine, super duper, people who are not on the autism spectrum have issues with this. There's that whole book, Who Moved My Cheese, right? In the education system, teachers go nuts over this kind of stuff. So what antecedent modification can we do to prevent somebody from melting down about something being moved? Well, on the one hand, we can minimize how often we move somebody's stuff. Like, that's one way that we could go about it, right? And that's an especially good way when we're working on something else. That, let's say that, what we're working on is social skills. And we're really focused on that right now, and we're trying to, build friendships and that kind of thing. Then we are not going to rearrange the contents of somebody's bedroom to challenge them on this while we're working on that. It's just not a priority right now, right? Doesn't mean it's not important, but we're saying, hey, we're working on this, so we're not going to work on this other thing. But when you are wanting to work on rearranging things, there's a couple of different things that you can do. And one of them, depending on the age and the ability of the individual, if it's a teenager, for instance, who has good receptive and expressive language, you can say to them, okay, today we're going to go into your room, and you're going to pick 3 things to move into different places, and you're going to reorganize them. And then there's a big reward after they do it. So you're giving the power to them to change it so that they see, oh, when this gets moved, my life does not collapse into ashes, right? But they've had the control over it. And then over time, then, you could take them back into the room, and you could say, okay, I'm going to move it now, and have them, you can express, first you could say, it's a desensitization process. You can say, how does it make you feel to know that I'm going to go in and to move something in your room? And they've got the anxiety going, and you make sure that you have enough nice things going on and bring them back down to a level where they're not feeling the anxiety. And then you can eventually take them in and just go in the space and talk about it. Then you can actually move it, because what happens is that they might have some feelings about it, but you keep talking them through it, and eventually they see, okay, the world didn't end. I love on The Big Bang Theory, Sheldon is very particular about this kind of thing. He has a lot of compulsions, and they've gotten to the point in the show now where he can have something happen and he doesn't lose his mind completely. And they go, look at you, you're doing so good. And he says, yes. And then as soon as it's all over, he goes ahead and moves it back where it was before. But that is improvement. And eventually, if they continue on this way, something could happen where he doesn't need to move it back as quickly and then ever. So antecedent modification, very, very effective at working on these kinds of things, but you have to go slow. And then the whole hearing the word no, saying no, and responding to a no, that's a whole other thing too. And again, if we're working on that, then we would bring it head on and we would pair it with something to make sure that it's a positive thing when something gets said. No for this means yes for this, right? So we say, no, you can't have this, and hand them their favorite ice cream or whatever. So like, oh, okay, well, I trade off, right? But if you're not working on the no, then minimizing, finding other words to say, like, let's think about it. Maybe we'll talk about it later. or maybe, right? Depending on what you're working on, because what you're working on is really the important thing. All right, we're going to take a break. Then we're going to come back and talk a little bit. We don't have a whole lot of time, but we're going to talk a little bit about what set me off this morning. And it goes hand in hand with the 3-term contingency and antecedent modifications. So stick with us.
Hello, fellow activists. In our last segment, we talked about step number 2, educate yourself. Step number 3 is get support. Now, any journey can feel overwhelming if you feel like you're walking it alone. Well, you're far from alone, because with 1 in 50 kids diagnosed with autism today, there are a lot of us out there. Of course, there's always the issue of financial support. Now, there's a handful of organizations out there that offer financial support to families in need. ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today, is one of them. Visit our website at www.act-today.org to find out more about our grant process. I want to talk about a different kind of support today, emotional support. Now, you can get that from other travelers on this path. Some of the best advice I've ever received is from the moms of other kids with autism who went to school with Wyatt or were involved with programs with him. Then there are the pioneers. These are the families that have gone through this years ago, and there was very little information out there. All of these people seem to have the desire to pay it forward. Now, one of them, Lisa Ackerman, who is one of my mentors, started an organization called TACA, Talk About Curing Autism. She actually took the concept of mentors and support groups and made it available to everybody. You can go to their website, talkaboutcuringautism.org, to find out more. During the first and most difficult year after Wyatt's diagnosis, I wrote an email to close family and friends, letting them know what was going on and the challenges our family was facing and why we dropped out of sight. I was amazed at the outpouring of love and affection and all the help I received from that email. First, you have to be vulnerable. You can't be afraid to ask. Try this out. Could you cook me a meal? Are you going to the market? Can you pick me up a few things? Could your kids play with my kid and make them feel included? Or can you come over and clean my house? Well, maybe not that last one, except with your best friend. And maybe the best support of all is having someone that listens, and that doesn't cost a dime. So until next time, surround yourself with the loving kindness of others and keep the faith.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We've been talking today about what sets us off, and we've also been talking about antecedent modifications, and so something set me off today. This morning, I frequently start my morning with looking at what's happening on Facebook, excuse me, and there was a new video on Facebook that it was, my advertisements were telling me you should watch this video. And it was called Ask an Autistic, What is ABA? And somebody had written in this morning and said, what is ABA? And I was like, oh, I want to hear from a person who is on the autism spectrum about what they think ABA is. And this is a lovely young woman, and I have started watching a couple other of her videos, and she identifies herself as being on the autism spectrum. And I want to start by saying that she is absolutely entitled to her opinion. What set me off, though, is that she started out giving a really good description of what ABA was, but then she went into another arena and she said some things that weren't true. And that bothers me because I so wanted to hear her point of view, and and I still want to hear her point of view, but there were some things that she talked about scientifically that aren't true, and they were out of context. So she gave almost the exact same definition that we have for 3-term contingency, talking about the fact that there's operant conditioning and talking about how there are rewards and punishments. And that is the definition of ABA in the 3-term contingent, and it talks about that. So she's not wrong in terms of that. But the context that wasn't included is that when we talk about ABA for autism, that it is almost never on the punishment side of things, almost never. And that only under the direction of, I would say, a BCBA a BCBA-D who has their doctorate in psychology. It is not something that good ABA uses because it hasn't been found to be effective in working with individuals who are on the autism spectrum. So there's that. But what really bothered me, and she was talking about the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence, and she was talking about the consequence as if it's almost always a punishment, which is the exact opposite. But the thing that she said that set me off, that I thought, oh no, this is so completely wrong, and she has a voice, and she's saying something that isn't true, and I want to change her mind because this is her opinion, but she's stating it as if it's a fact. What she said was, let's take, for instance, hand stimming, and she said, never in the history of ABA ever has anyone ever asked an autistic person why they're hand stimming, and there's a reason for it, and making a punishment for it is not the answer. And nothing could be further from the truth. That first of all, anytime there is an intervention that's done with ABA, when they look at a behavior and they want to change a behavior, that they want to get rid of a behavior, then it is standard practice to do an FBA, a functional behavior assessment. And the whole reason for the functional behavior assessment is to find out what the function of the behavior is. Why is the behavior happening? What is the paycheck for the behavior? In other words, why is the individual doing that? And there is a whole series of things that happen in an FBA that happen with observation, and interviewing is like the second stage of the FBA, and that means interviewing everyone that can be interviewed. So if it's possible to ask the individual and have them answer in any way that can be understood, they do ask the individual, why do you do that? The problem that I have sometimes is that our wonderful, wonderful adults who are on the autism spectrum, who are fabulous self-advocates, who I champion to the sun, the moon, and the stars, and I want you to have your voice, and I want you to have your opinion, and I want people to listen to you, and I want to listen to you. But my only asterisk here is that if everyone on the spectrum were like you, we wouldn't need to have this conversation, because you, if you are hand stimming, and I'm talking to the person who does Ask an Autistic, I can ask you. And people, when doing ABA would ask you. But I had a 3-year-old who hand stemmed who had no language, right? And so just asking him why you're stimming was not possible at that age. We did an FBA and we tried to figure out what the purpose of the hand stimming was. And then when we arrived at what was a pretty good scientific guess for it, then we gave him a replacement behavior that fulfilled the same need so that he got that taken care of, but it left him with the ability to write when he wanted to. Because here's the thing that I go back to with the choice. When my son was 3 and he was hand stimming, it wasn't a choice. It wasn't something that he could just stop doing, and because it filled a need, and that was a precious need that he needed to have filled. And I didn't want to just rip that away from him. That wouldn't have been good for him. But we discovered what the purpose of this was. And there were years when he still did this occasionally. I haven't seen him do it in a long time because the things that we gave him that worked in their stead worked better for him. He didn't stop hand flapping because we punished him, because that never happened. Not ever. Look at this proud mama bear. I wouldn't have let someone punish him for that. He needed this to calm himself, but we gave him other ways that allowed him to calm himself and write. And that's what good quality ABA is about. To say that never, ever, ever in the history of ABA has anybody asked is a gross misunderstanding of what ABA is. It's the complete opposite of what happens. And we don't punish people for engaging in behaviors. We find ways for them to express that behavior in a way that's functional for them. I go back to Temple Grandin and Stim in the Plate. that was a self-stimulatory behavior, and she spun the plate. It was what she wanted to do, and she wanted to obsess on it. It filled a need for her. It helped her analyze things. That helped her with her science. It helped her to stay calm, and her mother didn't take it away from her. But her mother said, okay, but Temple, you got to do other things too. Because what a crime and a shame if all Temple Grandin ever did was sit in a room and spin a plate. We would be a much poorer society. So I want to encourage you to go and watch videos on Ask an Autistic, and we are going to reach out to her to invite her to be on the show. But I fear for any young parent who is thinking about doing ABA and they see that and they get a misconception and decide not to do ABA because of that. That is a misconception. I have had ABA in my home for 5 years intensively, and nobody ever punished my son, not ever, for any of his challenging behavior. It just, in fact, as compared to other kids who don't get ABA, we didn't do punishment. It just didn't happen because we found that the reward was so much more effective, and because we were told by our team. There were times that I wanted to punish him for things, and our ABA team would say, that's just not going to get it done. That's just not going to get it done, and what you want is for him to do this, and so we're going to reward him into that behavior. And you know what? That's what works. And now I have a verbal son who's about to be 13. And he's able to tell me when he does engage in a self-stimulatory behavior, he is much more able to tell me, and I'll ask him, why are you doing that? He'll go, oh, well, you know, this, and he tells me. But I wouldn't have had that because my son wasn't as proficient in those things as this young woman is now. If he had been, we wouldn't have needed to do all the things that we did. I wish that our fabulous self-advocates who have their voices could understand that we want our kids to be like them. Listen, if the day comes when my son is doing YouTube videos and says that ABA is terrible, well, I won't believe that because it's helped him to have everything, but I would be thrilled. I would be thrilled. And he actually has the ability to do that now. And he uses it to do video games with and teach people how to beat a level on a video game at 12. You know, who knows what he'll be doing at 19. But that's what tears my ticket, is when we take something, you know, and the operant training part of what she said, and the fact that ABA does involve reward and punishment strategies, it does, but ABA for autism, minimally, and only under very controlled circumstances, and not corporal punishment, ever. And we always look for why is the behavior happening, and we always look for a replacement behavior, and never, good quality ABA for autism never takes away a behavior without giving a better behavior to replace it. And I also, you know, one of the things she also said is that ABA focuses on socially relevant behaviors. It's true. Guilty as charged on that one. And that she said, and I disagree with that, and that I totally embrace her opinion on that. I just think that when you have watched your child lay on the floor and cry and say, why won't they play with me? And you know why they won't play with him, because he's not doing it the way that they need him to do it, then I want to teach him that skill, so that later on he can choose, do I want to use this skill or not? And if he chooses not to, fine. But I never want to see my son laying on the floor saying, why won't they play with me ever again? So we work on the rest of the world, but I want to give him the skills in the meantime. That's the kind of parent that I am. That's what ABA is to me. So in any case, that's what set me off this morning. Okay, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back to finish out the show and tell you what's happening tomorrow. Stick with us.
So we're going to do down dog next. So with down dog, there are several different ways that you can do it, and I want to show you first and then help you with yours so that we can work on what feels good for you, okay? All right, because there's no right way to do it. It's more about what your body likes, all right? So for me, what I'm gonna do is start off with my hands at the top of my mat, my headlights. My fingers are aiming towards the top of my mat. And then I'm going to tuck my toes, and then my head is also gonna drop, and I'm going to look between my toes. Okay? And my body should be, or hopefully, like an A shape.
Or V.
Or V, yes.
Upside down V.
Yep. And so if your quads are tight or your hamstrings are tight, you might need to bend your knees a little bit.
Then it's a U.
Or if your shoulders are a little strained or a little tight, remember to push in through your feet. But also sometimes what feels really good is going down on your forearms, like this. You can actually start out this way instead, it's a little easier. So your forearms rest on the floor. You still tuck your toes, and then you're still looking between your toes. But rather than being on your hands then, your weight's along your hands and your forearms. Okay? All right. So, now it's your turn. Okay? So, yep. You're gonna do on your hands? Okay, yep. So your fingers are facing the front of the mat. Are you doing forearms? Forearms? Okay, there we go. Wow, you're very bendy. Very nice. And your gaze is right here between your toes. Excellent. Very nice, Jem. Wow. Awesome. Feet are a nice distance apart. How does that feel?
Okay.
Awesome. You want to come down? Excellent. Good.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I wanted to give you a couple of programming notes about the rest of the week. So, tomorrow, Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Grampichet is here. I know there have been a couple of questions that have come in today specifically that I'm saving. There's one that you wrote about the spit, about your child spitting and licking in his hands and putting that on his face. And I want to, Dr. Grampichet has answered a lot of questions about spitting, and I'm going to have her answer that. In the meantime, before tomorrow, though, I want to encourage you to go to some of the previous Ask Dr. Doreens and look up, you know, when we put a lot of the things that are in the description, we never get all of them, but when you watch Ask Dr. Doreen on the YouTube pages, the first thing that pops up is what all the questions are and what time code they are. And here's a little hint. When you click on, take your mouse and click on the question that you want, and it immediately skips to that point in the Ask Dr. Doreen. I will say too, on the card page, on card, if you go to centerforautism.com and you go to, there's an Ask Dr. Doreen page. If you go there, it doesn't have the most recent, I think, year and a half, 2 years, but it has a couple of years worth of them already coded by topic. So you could go through and find for spitting, and it will show you all the shows that it is in, because we've covered it a lot. And yours is very specific, so I'm going to have her answer that question, but you could watch a couple of those as well in the meantime. So she'll be here tomorrow, and we'll take other questions as well. There have been several other questions that have come through, and I've got some left from last week. But I really want to encourage people, don't wait till tomorrow to send your questions, because it's really hard for me to get all the questions in. So send them in. I put the questions together tonight. Then also tomorrow on the show, Nancy Allspaw-Jackson is saying that she's going to be back with us tomorrow, and I know how much you'll all be thrilled to have her back. And you know, we're going to be patient with how much time she needs to take. This is a great loss for her and for everybody, but most especially for her and Wyatt. Now, our special guest tomorrow, there's a new series that we're doing, Autism Family Portraits, where we're having the parents come in, and when possible for them to bring their child who's on the spectrum. So tomorrow, Diane Bernstein is going to be here with us, and she is bringing her son, Jeremy. And Jeremy is, I think Jeremy's either 13 or 14. He's a jewelry designer. He's such a delight. And Diane is an artist and works with kids on the spectrum doing art. So they're going to be here with us tomorrow, and that'll be really thrilling. Now on Thursday, in our first hour on Thursday, we've got an amazing guest who's going to be with us, Jean Nicole, who we've not had on the show previously, although I've wanted to have her on the show for years. She's going to be talking about the eating game, a game that helps us to be able to eat and eat well. So she'll be with us. And then in the second hour, we're going to show you the new episode of The Future is Bright with Stephanie Schaefer, and her guests this month are Jason Cherry, who he is a race car driver, and then he's got Michael Lever and Rose Yoakum are also with him, talking about a new project from Autism Society of America that is dealing with autism-friendly businesses and helping to define what is an autism-friendly business and helping us to be able to find them. So that's on Thursday. You're going to love all of that. So definitely tune in for that. We're gearing up. We got a lot of things going on here that I can't wait to share with you. So we're all out of time, but please, thank you for being here, and please give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.